So this is going to be exercise 18, which is the second part to the cardiovascular system labs and this one would be called the blood vessels. So basically this lab is going to pretty much go through naming the blood vessels, and it's going to mostly go through the systemic circulation. So remember that you can break up the circulatory system or the circulation throughout the body, the blood vessels throughout the body, into the systemic circulation. And the systemic circulation is going to be any of the vessels that are carrying the oxygenated blood from the heart to all of the body tissues. So all those arteries, except for the lungs, not the lungs. So all of those arteries that are carrying oxygenated blood to the body tissues, right? And then into the capillary beds, that will release the oxygen into the tissues. And then all of those veins, again, except for the lungs, not the lungs here, but all of the veins that are going to carry the deoxygenated blood back to the heart, back to the right atrium. So then we have this, so that's the systemic circulation. So then we're going to have what's called the pulmonary circulation. And the pulmonary circulation is going to be the set of vessels that are going to carry the deoxygenated blood, right, starting with the pulmonary trunk, branching into the pulmonary arteries, carrying that deoxygenated blood away from the heart into the lungs, right? And then back to the heart, once it's picked up the oxygen, dump the carbon dioxide, back to the heart in the pulmonary veins and into the left atrium. So that's the pulmonary circulation. So again, the pulmonary circulation is just the vessels that are carrying deoxygenated blood from the heart to the lungs, picking up oxygen, and then the vessels that are carrying it back to the heart, okay? So then everything else is the systemic circulation. So we're going to spend probably most of our time going through the vessels for the systemic. There's some for the pulmonary circulation that I just talked about, but most of our time on naming the vessels for the systemic circulation. And what I'm going to do is I find that it's really hard to transfer what's on your diagrams to our models that we use in the lab. And so the nice part is, even if I had the big Flatman model, I just took pictures of it, but even if I had the big Flatman model, it would be too hard to show you in a video because it would just be too small and the model's really large. So this actually works out really well. So what I want to do is I want to show you how to kind of go through these vessels and tricks to how you might remember them. So I'm going to start with this first, and these are all thing links that are linked through your Canvas module. So you can get to these through your Canvas module pretty easily. So I'll go through all three of them, and I'm going to start with the more superior vessels, and I'm going to talk about the ones that branch from the heart first, and then I'll talk about the veins that mirror it. So first I'm going to go through the arteries that branch from the heart, carrying oxygenated blood, and then to kind of the upper arms, and then I'll stop there, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk about the veins because the veins kind of mirror it, and I'm hoping that it'll help you remember them if I talk about them in that context. So first, I'm going to go through the branches off of the aorta. So remember, this is the ascending aorta coming here off of the heart here. So remember, the left ventricle is going to pump blood into the aorta through that aortic semilunar valve into the ascending aorta and then into the aortic arch. So that's your first label there. So from the aortic arch, you have these three major branches that come off, and I call them B, C, S. So if you can see them down here, B, C, S. So B is going to go off to the right side of the upper body here, and C and S are going to branch into the left portions of the upper body. So BCS is going to stand for B for brachiocephalic. So the brachiocephalic artery, or sometimes you'll hear it called the brachiocephalic trunk, you'll understand why in just a minute, is going to carry oxygenated blood to the right upper body, so the right head and the right arm. Then you're going to have, so that's B for brachiocephalic, okay? And so it might actually be helpful, I did this when I was a student. I drew the aortic arch, and then I drew the branch here coming off for B, brachiocephalic. And then here, C is going to stand for your left common carotid. So that's this one up here, left common carotid artery. And please make sure that you put artery or vein when you're taking the quiz. So if it's the left common carotid, please put left common carotid artery, or just left common carotid, and then just put A period stands for artery. So that's your left common carotid artery. So again, the C in BCS is for common carotid. So there's your left common carotid artery. And then the S here is for subclavian. So there's the left subclavian artery. So now, if you know, I know it's strange that you have the brachiocephalic right on this side, and then for the left side, it's branched into the left common carotid and left subclavian. But the nice part is, now that you know that, for the right side here, the brachiocephalic is then going to branch into the right common carotid. So here we go, right common carotid artery. And you can probably guess now, the right subclavian. I don't know if I have this marked, but that is the right subclavian, okay? So again, if you even can kind of draw this out for yourself, draw out the aortic arch, draw the right, the branch coming off for the right side of the upper body here, and then the two branches coming off for the left side of the upper body here, okay? And then put BCS, B for brachiocephalic, okay? The brachiocephalic's down here. B for brachiocephalic, okay? And then C is going to be for the left common carotid, okay? And then S is going to be for the left subclavian. So then if you already know that you've got the left common carotid, left subclavian, here now, this brachiocephalic is just going to branch into the right common carotid and the right subclavian artery here. Okay, so hopefully that will help you with some of those upper arteries. I think it's easier to memorize them in kind of groups like that. And so I'm going to do something odd here, and I'm going to switch over to the veins here. And it's because the veins are going to mirror that a little bit, except for they're flip-flopped. So the right and the left side are going to be flip-flopped. So remember here on the right side, you have the brachiocephalic artery. You're going to have the brachiocephalic vein on the left side. So they kind of are just going to be flip-flopped from each other. So let's go through the veins. And I'm going to go through the veins backwards. I'm going to branch them backwards just because that's how I remember them. But if you want to remember them as they branch coming into the heart, you can do that. So whichever way is easiest for you. So remember here, we have the superior vena cava. That's going to be bringing deoxygenated blood into the right atrium. So that's going to be your first one, superior vena cava, right? Okay, and so then here you're going to have these branches coming off. But now this time here, okay, you're going to have the subclavian coming off of the left. So it's kind of backwards, right? So now you have the subclavian. And instead of having the common carotid, we don't call it the common carotid in the veins. We call it the jugular. So instead of having these same branches, what you're going to have coming here is just the vice versa. But the only thing you have to remember here with the vice versa is that it's flip-flopped, right? And also that the carotid is going to be replaced with jugular. So here we go. We've got the superior vena cava, right? And now on this side, you have the subclavian vein. You have the right internal jugular vein here. And then you have the brachiocephalic. So there's your brachiocephalic vein. So now it's just kind of backwards, right, from the heart. Here you have the brachiocephalic artery for the right side. Here, the brachiocephalic vein is on the left side. But now the nice part is that that left brachiocephalic vein is going to branch into your internal jugular, right? So here's your left internal jugular vein and into your left subclavian vein. Okay, so it's just mirroring those. So again, here you've got that superior vena cava, and I again would suggest that you draw this out right next to your branches off the aorta. Then draw out, here's your superior vena cava, and then you can draw your right subclavian vein as one branch here, your right internal jugular as another branch here, and then the brachiocephalic coming off here, and then you can have your branching into your left internal jugular and your left subclavian. So I think that's kind of the easiest way to go through these parts of the initial blood vessels that are either carrying blood to the head and the upper arms, and then vice versa, the veins, because the veins actually kind of mirror it in a way, which is kind of nice. So then we can get into some of the, we can branch from here, and I'm going to do the arteries first, and then I'll do the veins. So we'll go back. And some of these you just kind of have to get a feel for them in terms of, and hopefully just hearing me say the names of them will also help you to remember them as well. I feel like when you're just looking at the words and you don't know how to pronounce them, that makes it a little more challenging. So remember back here, we talked about, here's the aortic arch, here's your BCS, right? And so your S is your subclavian. So we're going to start with the subclavian here. So there's your left subclavian artery. That left subclavian artery is then going to branch right around the armpit into the left axillary artery. So I want you to think of the axillary region as your armpit region. So anytime we use the word axillary, it's usually right around your armpit. Okay, so there's your left axial artery. And then you're going to see that is going to branch into the brachial artery. And that's probably all you're going to see here. And so the axillary artery it kind of runs into the brachial artery, because the brachial artery is the big branch off of the axial artery. So the axillary, we call it the axillary artery. And again, this is just the left side, the left axillary artery, but the right side would mirror this. Because it's in that armpit region. So, and then as you move down here, then it's going to be the left brachial artery. Let's see. So that covers that part. Now let's go ahead and talk about the veins. So if we're talking about the veins on this side, okay, you're going to have your right subclavian. So remember here, we'd have the brachiocephalic branching into the subclavian, but you'd still have the subclavian then would mirror this side, okay? But here on the right side, you have it directly branching, or I should say branching into the superior vena cava. But so here, we're going to go backwards here to the right subclavian vein, right? So here's your right subclavian vein, and then here you're going to see, this is where it's going to get a little different on you. So the two veins that are going to go into the subclavian vein are the cephalic vein and the basilic vein. And so the cephalic vein is going to be kind of running along the more lateral side, okay? And the basilica is going to be on the more medial side. So if that helps. But anyway, so you can just kind of, again, for some reason, it just helps me to do them backwards. But you may have your own way of doing them. So I just like to remember that the subclavian is going to branch here into the basilic and the cephalic, okay? So cephalic, basilic. So hopefully that will help you out. Let me see. Oh, I didn't do any of the pulmonary circulation here. So let me run through the pulmonary circulation real quick here, and then I think I've covered everything for this one. So pulmonary circulation should be pretty easy because we just did the blood flow through the heart. So this one is fairly easy. We've got the pulmonary trunk here because, again, you're coming off of the right ventricle. Pulmonary trunk here, branching into your pulmonary arteries, which I don't think are marked here. Pulmonary arteries branching, okay? And then you have your pulmonary veins bringing the blood back into that oxygenated blood back to the heart, okay? So there's pulmonary veins. there's your pulmonary arteries. Remember, in this case, it's very important to remember that in the pulmonary circulation, things are kind of backwards. So in the pulmonary circulation, your pulmonary arteries away from the heart, okay, are carrying deoxygenated blood. Okay, then they're going to pick up as they run into the capillary beds in the lungs that are going to surround we'll talk about these sacs called the alveolar sacs, where they're going to exchange gases, pick up oxygen, and then they'll be transferred back to the heart via the pulmonary veins. So those pulmonary veins are carrying oxygenated blood back to the left atrium. So hopefully that will help you kind of remember that. But the nice part is you've gotten this already twice, so this will help. So I think we've covered actually I'm just making sure I've covered all of the parts here. But again, I feel like it's easier to go through these in groups. Yes, we've gotten everything. So again, that's just my way of learning. But for most anatomy students, there's just so much to remember that if you can group these parts together, especially the blood vessels, because I think this tends to be so challenging for students. If you can group the blood vessels, I think that might be the easiest way to go through this. So let's go ahead and go through the arms first, and then we'll go through some of the trunk and then the legs. So I think we'll go through probably the hard part is on these models. They don't always depict all of the vessels well, and so I'm trying to kind of cover most of the vessels that you'll be responsible for. But I feel like, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this is I feel like they didn't really, and I used these from lab. They don't have some of the vessels that you needed to know kind of flagged on this. So anyway, we're going to go through, especially when it comes to the veins. So when it comes to the veins, I'll go through a couple extra vessels. So remember that as we have blood vessels kind of entering into the arms, we've got, for the arteries, it's going to be the subclavian artery, okay? So here would be the right subclavian artery, and as you move down into the kind of armpit region, then you're going to be branching into the axillary artery, right? Okay. And then as you branch down even further, then you're going to get into the brachial, which again isn't really depicted very well here, the brachial artery. But that brachial artery is going to run right along here, and this is important because the brachial artery below the armpit here is actually going to be one that if you are a paramedic, you can palpate your brachial artery. So if you have the opportunity here, and again, I'm sorry that it's not marked, but this would be where your brachial artery would be. And so what you can do is move down right around this region right here, kind of underneath your armpit, right around where your bicep is, and if you can kind of push in between your bicep, and you're going to feel around right again, you kind of have to push your bicep out of the way, and you can feel right up against kind of the humerus there. You'll be able to feel the brachial pulse. So that one's kind of a cool one, an important one for you to know if you, again, are going to be a paramedic. So again, that's not marked on this model very well, so you won't necessarily have to know that for the exam, but I do feel it's an important one for you to know. And please try to palpate your own brachial pulse. See if you can find it. Again, it's a tough one to find. I may try to show you an image of where you can find that. I'll try to take a picture and add it to the end of this. Because I do know I have some paramedic students, so that you can see, and you probably already know how to palpate your brachial artery, but that's okay. Just in case, that's an important one. So again, we've got the brachial artery, and then it'll branch down here into the radial artery, which makes sense because that's your radius on your thumb side, right? So there's your radial artery, and as you can guess, on your pinky side, this is going to be your ulnar artery. So that'll cover most of the arteries on that side. Now, let's get into the veins, which are a little more complicated. And again, I'm going to I like to go through them backwards. So excuse me for going through the veins backwards here. So here you're going to see, remember we had initially on this side, we had the brachiocephalic vein branching into the jugular, internal jugular, and then into the subclavian, right? The subclavian vein. And then that subclavian vein is going to branch into the cephalic and the basilic. So here is going to be the cephalic vein, and here is going to be the basilic vein, okay? So then from here, I feel like they don't depict on this model very well brachial, so it wouldn't be one that I would ask you where the brachial veins are. So, they're probably, they would be depicted maybe here and in here, but they don't depict them well on this model. So again, you're not responsible for that on this model. You are going to be responsible for this one, though, called the median cubital vein right here. And I'm sorry that I don't have it tagged on this. I just took pictures from our anatomy homepage, and it didn't have this one marked. But the median cubital vein is an important one for phlebotomy. So that's one that we often like to draw from for phlebotomy. So there's your median cubital vein. And then as you come down here, you will branch into, you'll have the radial vein on this side, and then you'll, of course, have the ulnar vein on this side, which, again, aren't marked here, but there would be your ulnar vein, and here would be your radial vein here. So hopefully that helps you with those kind of parts. I know it mostly marks the arteries there. So that's the arms, and that's pretty much what you need to know for the arms. Now let's kind of go into the trunk. And the trunk is actually fairly easy if you have the organs, which the nice part is on these models, you have the organs. So this is the liver, right? And the liver we often refer to when we're talking about the liver, we use the term hepatic. So this, of course, is going to be the hepatic artery right here, okay? Hepatic artery. So, and then as you can guess, this is going to be because it's coming from the liver here, it's going to be the hepatic vein. So again, if you know that this is the liver here, it's easy to know the hepatic artery and the hepatic vein. Then, as we talk about the kidneys here, right? Here's your kidneys. When we refer to the kidneys, we use the term renal. So here is going to be the renal artery, and here is going to be the renal vein, okay? So, and we're on the left side, so it's marked left, but you don't necessarily have to mark left. If you just mark, I'm happy if you mark renal artery and renal vein. So again, renal is the term that we use for the kidneys, renal artery and renal vein there. So that, I think, covers most of what you needed to know for the trunk of the body. So now let's go into the legs. And I think I'm going to start with, I'll start with, and this is going to be the nice part because you're going to find that in the kind of superior portions of the legs and the trunk here, the branches off of the trunk into the legs, you're going to find that the arteries and the veins are going to mirror each other, which is really nice. And not be the opposite of each other, but literally mirror each other. So let's start with first the abdominal aorta. So you've got the descending, remember you have the descending aorta, and that will run through the aorta up here in the thoracic area is going to be the thoracic aorta. And then, of course, once you hit below the diaphragm, then it's the abdominal aorta. Okay, so above the diaphragm here would be thoracic, and below would be the abdominal aorta. So this is and that's this tag here, abdominal aorta. So then the abdominal aorta is going to branch into these first two big branches, the left and right common iliac artery. So there's the left common iliac artery, okay? Then that common iliac artery is then going to branch into the external and internal iliac arteries. So the internal iliac artery is going to be this one right here, okay? Just like it sounds, going more internal. And here's the external iliac artery. So you can see, and if you want to see how they're spelled here, you can follow this down. Here is going to be the internal iliac artery right here. And then here is your external iliac artery. So that's kind of nice because your veins are going to mirror this. But so again, just common iliac branching into internal and external iliacs. So then we'll get into, let's go ahead and follow our external iliac down here. And the external iliac is going to, once you kind of hit the thigh region, then we call this the femoral. So this will be the femoral artery. And the femoral or femoral artery, it's pronounced both ways. There's not necessarily really a correct way. You can also palpate your femoral artery, and I'll try to put some pictures again of this at the very end to show you where you can palpate your femoral artery. That's also an important one to know if you're a paramedic, because if you can't find the carotid, you can't find the brachial, sometimes you may need to look for the femoral artery. So I'll show you that one as well. So there's your femoral artery. And for the rest of the legs, I'll have to show you in the next slide over. So then now the nice part is, let's talk about the veins, because this is going to work out really nice for you guys in terms of numbers. I'm going to go backwards again with the veins, and I'm sorry that I do that. But here you go. You've got the inferior vena cava, right? And here, this it's going to bifurcate again here, although this is going into the inferior vena cava, but that's okay. We're just going to, whatever helps you to remember it, this is what helped me remember it. So here you're going to have the common iliac vein, right? So the common iliac vein coming off of here. And then that common iliac vein is going to branch here. And you can see this little tiny branch. I'm sorry that my pointer is kind of covering that. But that little tiny branch here is going to be the internal iliac vein. So again, we've got the common iliac vein branching into the internal iliac vein, and then the external iliac vein here, which is down here. Okay, so it's going to be just the same as the arteries, which is awesome. And they literally mirror each other. They're right next to each other. So here's the right internal, here's the left internal iliac artery. Here's the left internal iliac vein. Here's the left external iliac vein. And here's the left external iliac artery. Okay, so again, really nice to memorize that together. Just group all that together in your head, and that helps to kind of save you from having to go through too much. Again, that's how we do anatomy. You have to lump it together. So then as you follow this external iliac vein down, and this one, it's nice because you can actually see the saphenous vein. So you'll have a branch off of it called the saphenous, the great saphenous vein. And then you'll also have a branch, which they're not showing here. They cut it, which is the femoral branch. So, but you can at least see that here. Okay, so let me go ahead and go now to the lower legs. And so for the lower extremities, I feel like, unfortunately, this model doesn't do it justice in terms of showing you can see the veins. It really doesn't show you much in terms of the veins. So remember, if you look on your diagram on page 204, they show more of the veins for the leg in 204. And you can see that external iliac vein is going to really consist of these two kind of major branches. And the two major branches are the femoral vein and the great saphenous vein. So this is the great saphenous vein, and then there would be the femoral, which would be on top here. Again, you're just not really seeing that. So there is your great saphenous vein. They really don't depict many of the other veins that you need to see very well here. So I didn't mark them on the model because on these models they just don't have that much depicted, which is fine. So again, I'm mostly mostly going to use the models for the quiz. So you'll see these models should look very familiar on the quiz. So then let's do the arteries though, because we can see at least more of the arteries in the model here. So remember we talked about for the arteries, you have the femoral artery coming, that's really the biggest branch off of that external iliac artery. And so this is showing your femoral, this is depicting your femoral artery. Okay, and then here, right behind the knee, is going to be a branch off of that called the popliteal artery. And then here is going to be a branch called the posterior tibial artery, which makes sense because it's posterior of your tibia. And then here's a branch called the anterior tibial artery. And then for those, here's those dorsal arteries down here. The dorsal arteries of the foot are just going to be these ones down here, okay, that are all branched here. So that's pretty much the majority of what we see on the models and the majority of what we're going to cover for the quiz. You can see there's, I believe we pretty much covered most of them. We don't see a few of, I'm just going to look through a few of the, mainly the veins. I think we get to see all of the arteries on these models, but a few of the veins, like you're not really going to see the fibular veins on these models, and the popliteal veins, I think, are the two major ones that you don't get to see on these models. So sorry, we're just limited sometimes in the models that we have, but you can see them on the diagrams as well. And I'll also I'm going to add in a little section at the very end of this video to show you how you can palpate your the different arteries if you're, again, trying to take for a pulse. I'll put that on the very end of this for those of you that are into emergency medicine or just going to go into nursing or other medical fields. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know. I know that arteries are challenging. I'm really hoping that this will help you. Arteries and veins are challenging, especially the systemic ones. I think the pulmonary circulation is pretty easy for most, but the systemic is really challenging. So just by knowing some of the, again, terms for the parts of the body, like popliteal is going to be kind of behind the knee region. So popliteal, or around the knee region, popliteal is a good term. So that's always helpful. If you know this is your tibia, knowing that that's your posterior tibial artery. Here, this is anterior of your tibia, anterior tibial artery. That hopefully will help out. All right, so let me know if you have any questions, and I am more than happy to answer your questions on this, or if you're confused on the models, you can also just give me a call on that Google voicemail number.